And the reason we went to the neighborhood store because we didn't have a bank account. So the guy there was a good guy. You know neighborhood stores, man. They're community people. I love them. He'd cash my check and he'd let me buy groceries. So we bought groceries and we went outside, and every weekend there was this young man with 2 kids and his wife, and he was selling corn on the cob on a stick, elotes, for $1.
Oh yeah.
And he put everything, whatever you wanted. But what amazed me about this guy, you have to learn to understand when certain people come into your life. So he inspired me because I looked at him and I'm like, doesn't he know he's just a street vendor? He's standing there like he has a 5-star restaurant. And that inspired me with his attitude, his smile, and he greeted me and he said, hey, you want one? Yeah, let me have 2. He's con todo, with everything. Yes, ponle todo, put everything on it. I bought 2, one for me and my son. I took a bite, and then I took a second bite, and then you always got to remember the word revelation leads to a revolution. What is a revelation? Something that was always there. So the second bite, I looked at it and I thought, oh my God, that looks like a Cheeto. So I did what every entrepreneur, every great leader has ever said. I said these simple words, what if?
Yep.
Every great leader at one time has got to say, what if I show up to that meeting? What if I do? So I said, what if I put chili on a Cheeto? So I went and told Judy, and I said, like, Judy's that type of woman, man. She got my back. She's gonna go to town with me, and whatever we got to do. She said, let's do it. She said, go to the plant and get some Cheetos with no cheese. So next day I went. I got a trash bag. I filled it up with, Cheetos. They go on. It's called a slurry. They go on wet. Doritos, it's more like a dry seasoning.
Mm-hmm.
But Cheetos, it's a slurry. They go on wet.
Oh wow!
All right. I didn't know that either.
I go on wet too.
Yeah. Dan does that all the
So
time.
I brought some. It's cornmeal. All it is cornmeal, and it's popped into that form. So I brought a whole bunch home with no seasoning, put them in a trash bag, and and by this time, when R&D would come to the facility, I would always stick my nose, through the window in the little laboratory and see how they would do things. These guys were, scientists, 10 years, to get their degrees. And I'd poke my head in there and ask questions. So I kind of knew, ghetto style, how to do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we got to the kitchen after a few batches, we finally got it right. She used to work at Target warehouse, and she took some to her work. And by the way, we're talking about Walmart and Target. Both of those CEOs are good friends of mine. Doug at Walmart and Brian at Target. Now, Brian used to be my boss. He used to work at PepsiCo. So he was so happy because Judy was a warehouse worker at Target. So he said, like, yeah, Target had a role in creating hot Cheetos. So that day we come back and Judy says, hey, everybody at Target liked it. At Frito-Lay, my plant, everybody said, this is great. And everybody said, you need to call the CEO. And Judy said, all my friends said you have to call the CEO. So she said, call the CEO,
And I hate to interrupt you, but at this point, do you have them in a bag and they're done? So when you had the spice and the flavoring to everything you wanted, did you have them ready to give to the CEO, or was it just an idea at that point?
No, I had some in bag, but I got them ready for the CEO a little while later. But the very beginning, I had them. I usually have some right here in front of me.
I thought he was getting ready to do a magic trick. Like he was going, I usually have some. Just pull it out of his ear or something.
There it is.
Not to say I'm disappointed.
But anyways, I had them.
But
I bought some industrial Ziploc bags. Not sandwich bags, but they were industrial. And that's how I first shared them, like here, I wanted them to, feel like a bag. So remember, this is a command and control. You don't do what I'm about to do. So I went and found the corporate directory, and it was just a phone book, of the day. Because again, there's no email.
Sure.
So you could find anybody in your division, Kansas or whatever. Of course, the very one was the CEO. So I remember I asked the secretary if I could use it, and she said no. This is not for personal use, because after all,
probably worried about losing your job too.
Yeah, it's got to be personal. And I said, I'm going to call the CEO, and she said, go ahead, use mine. Now I look back, she was gaining an audience because she felt, hey, Richard's going to get fired on the spot, guys. Come and watch this. And so I called Mr. Enrico up, and so I always say, I always have to refer back to, and I will for the rest of my life, to the leadership of a woman. I believe it is so special. I will take the leadership of a woman any day. My grandma, my mom, and my wife, and now Roger's executive assistant. She was just that, an executive assistant. So I told her, could I talk to Mr. Enrico? And, the understanding in corporate America, command and control, that only a division president would call the CEO. I mean, a vice president wouldn't even do that. Even today, you don't do that. So she's kind of like, well, I don't recognize the name. What area do you run? And I said, I'm in California. She said, oh, you're the president of California? I said, no, I work in Southern California. The VP of SoCal? I said, no, I work in the plant. She goes, oh, okay. You're the vice president of operations. I said, no, I work inside the plant. Plant manager? No. She said, what are you? And I said, I'm the GU, the janitor. And she's like, what's this call about? And I said, I saw Roger's video, and he said, act like an owner. And I started to do all this stuff. And I put all these together, and I think I have this great idea. Nobody, we're not doing anything to sell to people that, love spicy chips. And I think, it would just work. And I wanted to share with him. And she said, hang on, Richard. And I love the fact that she called me Richard. Said, hang on, Richard. So it took a couple of minutes. So here's what I'm thinking in my mind. It took her 2 minutes. And I know she's telling Roger, you need to take this call. This guy has something. This is what you've been waiting for. You've asked people to be empowered. Here's a guy you need to take. The way a secretary would, right?
Sure, yeah.
And because when he got on the phone, guys, he was so excited. He was, Richard, I hear you got an idea for me. Man, that's wonderful. And I said, yeah, I saw your video and I did this. And guys, I was just talking from my heart. I've never presented or done anything like that. I just like me and you talking right now, let's get a beer and, just have a conversation, no, nothing to be nervous about, just whatever. And
sure.
Then he said, I'll be there in 2 weeks. So I hung up the phone. I was floating. I did it. I've never done anything like that in my life, and I did it. He's coming to see me. But I did one thing that was wrong, that nobody was ready for. I broke protocol. At the time, I couldn't even spell the word protocol, let alone what it meant.
Sure.
So the calls went into action. The president was notified, the West Division, every senior vice president, all the way down to my plant manager. And the question was the same. Who's this Richard guy? Who let the janitor call the CEO? So by this time, the plant manager, it's been about 20 minutes, I don't know, half hour, I don't remember, a long time ago. And he came out and he just ripped me apart. Now, keep in mind, this is command and control. This was normal. You see the old movies where the boss is just cussing out the worker and you couldn't do it. That was pretty much, you can't do it today, lawsuits and, stress release. But back in those days, it was common. So it wasn't personal. It's just like, who the F do you think you are? Do you realize everybody's coming? And he said, now I gotta get everything ready. I gotta paint the place. And then he said one thing that just gave me a heart attack. He said, you're doing the presentation. And I thought, I'm doing the presentation? I've never even done homework. So I go home and I tell Judy, and she can tell by the look on my face, like, what's wrong? I said, I'm gonna get fired. She said, why? And I said, because you told me to call the CEO. Now he's coming to see me and I got to get a presentation. But listen here, guys, typical leadership of a woman. Here's what she tells me. Calm down. It's not that bad. We're going to go to the library and check out a book on how to develop a marketing strategy. So we went to the library. You know, we got like 3 books, and I copied 3 paragraphs from 1 book, put them on transparency. Then we made a 100 bags. And, you know, part of the, you know, what I did, you know, to the earlier question, is I drew the graphics on the bag. And then when it came to seal it, you know, I didn't know how to seal it, but I always said, you know, ingenuity from the hood, innovation from the hood with the iron. I realized that at a certain temperature, without melting it, I could melt it closed. So, you know, me and my family made 100 bags, and this is an actual, I don't know how good you can see it, but it's an actual picture of what it looked like. This is one of the originals that I drew.
It still looks like the same font. Like they're using the same font too to this day.
Yeah, you know, so.
And does the CEO end up flying out to see you within the 2 weeks?
Yes, he did. You know, so, you know, he came out and he brought, you know, the marketing folks, you know, whoever he brought. And in those days, even the people that he didn't bring, if the CEO was coming if you were within a 200-mile radius and you were an executive, you better be there. You know, the dog and pony show, right?
Sure.
The CEO's coming on, you better show your face and, you know, whatever. And so I don't know who was there, but so I went and bought my first tie for $3.50, you know, the Goodwill, and had my neighbor tie it into a knot the night before. So we make up 100 bags. I get my transparencies. I put on my tie, and I'm walking out that door, and Judy does 3 things for me. And these are 3 things that I'm going to do for the rest of my life. She inspired me, she encouraged me, and she reminded me